My name is Gabe Mathews of the True Searchers, Paranormal Investigators. This video is a countdown of my top 10 albums of 2021. This also could be considered my top 10 paranormal albums of 2021. All these albums have a paranormal, horror, supernatural, occult, or any adjacent related topic associated with the music or the lyrics. I know that there was tons of non-paranormal albums that came out this year that were really great, and I even enjoyed some of them myself, but as a paranormal investigator, I don't plan to talk about those. Albums that have a paranormal or have, horror or any of these kind of themes, supernatural, occult, even spiritual, they tend to resonate with me more than normal albums. And again, I don't really know what was popular this year, what most people listen to. I'm sure you can go online and you can find these type of albums. There's plenty of people doing countdowns of, general music, your hip hop and pop and, maybe some rock related music. I'm sticking with, paranormal, horror, occult themed music. I don't even know what was popular this year. Maybe like Drake, which you can go and listen to his music and he can talk about being a certified lover boy or how he has no friends in the industry. He's Drake. I mean, he's very popular. He has tons of friends. And, he talked about being a lesbian. All his lyrics sound like they were written by a middle schooler, which apparently, middle school girls are his target audience. My number 10 album is Scarlxrd, Deadrising. While Backxwash, I Lie Here Buried with My Rings and Dresses, is probably a better overall album in the horrorcore industrial hip hop scene, and Scarlxrd is a little more of trap metal. This album just goes heavier and harder and is more metal than that other album that I mentioned. And I do want to give an honorable mention to that Backxwash album. It wasn't until like the fourth or fifth listen of this album that I realized that all the X's are supposed to be O's. I actually was calling her Scarlxrd and then Scarlxrd. Look at all the track listings. There's a bunch of X's. The first track is INTRX, which intro, or LXUDER, which is loader, or CXFFINS, which is coffins. So, silly me, I wasn't even looking at the lyrics or looking at the names, and I just thought that it was Scarlxrd or Scarlxrd, but it's Scarlxrd, and it's a very prominent thing to have all of our tracks have X's instead of O's. I was wondering if this is like a trap metal type thing, or if maybe she lost tic-tac-toe to someone. I'm not really sure about the whole X's and O's things, if this is a thing, but the album hits really hard and I highly recommend it. My number 9 album is Helloween. Helloween are power metal gods. They are make some of the best of the genre. This album would be rated a lot higher, but the lyrics aren't really paranormal or horror or Halloween related. I highly recommend going back and listen to Keeper of the Seven Keys Part 1 and 2 from 1987, 1988. Those are the better albums, and this album pales in comparison to that. But it is their best album in like 15 years, so I highly recommend listening to it. The music video for Skyfall does have some aliens flying around in a flying saucer. And if there's any boomers watching this video, this is probably the best album to check out on this list. I also really like the name Helloween. It combines hell with Halloween. Helloween. It also has the word hello in it, almost like they're saying hello, Ween, which Ween is a really great band. They have the Boognish as their logo, which is a demon god. My number 8 album is Rob Zombie, the Lunar Injection Kool-Aid Eclipse Conspiracy. I thought Rob Zombie was done musically. I was a big fan of White Zombie and those early Rob Zombie records, but he really fell off the map. His last albums pretty much sucked. But then he came out with the Lunar Injection Kool-Aid Eclipse Conspiracy. This is his best record since Hellbilly Deluxe 2. I'd much rather him be making music, though, than his movies, which his movies pretty much suck. I mean, his best one was what? Devil's Rejects, which is a 7 at best. His lyrics are much better this time, with all those lengthy song titles, which is something I'm very much a fan of. Here, let me read some of them. The Expanding the Head of Zed, The Triumph of the King Freak, A Crypt Preservation and Superstition, A brief static hum, and then the radio blared, 18th Century Cannibals, Excitable Morlocks, and The One-Way Ticket on the Ghost Train. And there's a couple shorter titles like Get Loose. There's even dumb song titles like Shake Your Ass, Smoke Your Grass. But even those dumb song titles, he has a little fun with it. Even tracks with like a lame song title like Boom Boom Boom, he makes up for it with good supernatural lyrics because it's a song about witches. Boom boom, like boom boom boom, the witch has got the broom. Boom boom boom, she's sliding up the broom. I'm a big fan of songs about witches, and this is the best witch song of 2021. Which brings me to my number 7 album, which is Papangu, Holoceno. Papangu is a band from Brazil, and all the lyrics are in Portuguese. I was listening to this album, and it was pretty much your run-of-the-mill metal album with a little bit of progressiveness, a little bit of avant-garde. It didn't really catch my eye until I was looking through all the lyrics, and I noticed that they're in Portuguese. One of the songs was São Francisco, S-A-O, and I was like, are they talking about San Francisco? So I Googled to see if São meant San, and it did. So they're talking about San Francisco in California. Then I looked deeper in the lyrics, and it was like demons and spirits coming and causing floods and earthquakes and causing death. And then I looked up the other songs, and there was a song about a werewolf. I highly recommend giving this album a listen, and while you're listening to it, you can pull up Google Translate the lyrics, and then you'll know what they're singing about. And after a few listens, you'll be singing right along with them. And I don't want this list to be all about extreme metal. So my number 6 and number 5 albums are both extreme metal albums. So I'm actually going to combine them together. My number 6 album is Dungeon Serpent, World of Sorrows. And my number 5 album is Hooded Menace, The Tritonus Bell. My camera battery died. I have to switch to this handheld camera. I can't find the charger for my other camera. So we'll go with this one. Hooded Menace, The Tritonus Bell, or is it Tritonus, Tritonus, The Tritonus Bell. I combine these records because they're both extreme metal, and I know that not everyone is into metal, and this is in the top 10 metal albums. These are albums that have paranormal, occult, spiritual, horror themes, and both these albums do. Dungeon Serpent is melodic death metal, whereas Hooded Menace is death doom metal. Both albums have lyrics that are paranormal or supernatural in nature. This next record is an extreme metal record, my favorite extreme metal record of the year, Worm, Foreverglade. Its genre is death doom metal. What drew me to this record was the album cover. What kept me listening was its depth and poetic nature, its structured composition with well thought out orchestration, good synths, and they even use a pan flute. It may take a couple listens to really understand this album. For me, every time I've listened, it got better and better, to the point where it landed at number 4 on my year-end list. This Worm album has great production, and they do a good job vomiting a very chaotic, nightmarish hellscape filled with parasitic swamp creatures. Number 3 on my end of the year top albums is Billie Eilish, Happier Than Ever. I know what you're thinking. This album isn't paranormal, horror, or supernatural. But in my opinion, Billie Eilish has a dark, horror-themed aesthetic. This album is probably one of the only albums on my list that has crossover with, all of your normal top lists of the year. And in fact, I think it should be higher on everyone else's list. I think this should be an album that everyone's talking about, other people's, number 1 or close to it, top 10, album of the year. I think it's very well done. I think she's grown as an artist. Our first album was Eilish, and this album is Eilishier. And if you're a paranormal purist and you don't think that Billie Eilish is paranormal, then you can disregard this album on my countdown. And if you want to know, what my 10th album would be, it would be Paranorm Empyrean. I really wanted to include this album on the list. It's a pretty solid technical thrash metal, melodic death metal record, but you know, the lyrics weren't as paranormal horror themed as I'd like them. And you know, it just didn't really stick with me at the end. I can consider that at number 10 or an honorable mention. You include that Paranorm record at number 10 and move all the numbers down. Eliminate Billie Eilish at 3, and then so Worm would be 3. Do the math and figure out what my top 10 without Billie Eilish would be if you know you're a paranormal purist. But back to the Billie Eilish record, this album is very relatable to me, and it's crazy that it's written by a 19-year-old. I think Billie Eilish has that dark horror themed aesthetic, and I think some of her albums have this like pop industrial sound like Oxytocin, and some of her lyrics are a little dark, like getting older and everyone dies. Every track on this album is great, and at 56 minutes and 11 seconds, the album just flies by. I relate pretty hard to this record. Speaking of records that I relate to, the number 2 record on my list is Sematary, Screaming Forest. I discovered Sematary this year, and I have been listening non-stop. It is the soundtrack to my life that I've never heard of before, and it will continue to be the soundtrack that inspires me and gives me inspiration as a paranormal investigator, horror enthusiast, and studier of the occult. This album has a bunch of bangers from I Held the Night, Willows, Scarecrow, Rituals, and my favorite track, Redwoods. This is basically a concept record about the forest. If you come into their woods, they'll kill you. Walk up in my woods, I'ma skin you whole. We creep and sneak and rock and roll around the redwoods. The trees, they come alive and they're haunted. We're the haunted mound from where the trees frown. Every day is Halloween, every night a ritual, which is kind of what I would like my life is. Every day is Halloween, you know, and you're performing, you know, rituals, experiencing the supernatural, the paranormal on an everyday, every night basis. And yeah, there's some, you know, fictional, there's some horror elements. You know that they're not skinning people alive with their cutters, glocks, and saws, and shotguns. They have such a unique mix of sound from alternative, metal, experimental hip-hop, witch house, horrorcore, trap metal, haunted mound for life. Which brings me to my number 1 record of the year, which is also Sematary, Rainbow Bridge 3. Sematary spells his name with an S, which makes me wonder, is he a fan of Stephen King's book or the movies of Pet Sematary, which also spells its name with an S. Just like Screaming Forest, every track on this album is a banger, with my favorites being Chainsaw Party, Necromancer, Creeping Through the Woods, Tooth Taker, and Skin Carver. I'd like to hear Sematary sing more about paranormal investigation instead of just murdering people and chopping people up. This album has been a lot more diverse than Screaming Forest. All the lyrics are horror themed with great production by DJ Sorrow. The blending of genres and varieties make this my number 1 album of the year. This album, Screaming Forest, and all of Cemetery Graveman's albums have been the soundtrack to my entire year and what I've been missing. You know, as a paranormal investigator, I put on this music. It inspires me to seek out horror, to seek out, you know, spooky stuff, to seek out paranormal, supernatural. It's something that I love and enjoy, and you can see that the Haunted Mound really have a passion for horror. And even when it gets cartoony about, you know, chopping people up and skinning people, I mean, we're talking about a rapper who is basically like Jason Voorhees. Imagine if Jason Voorhees or a serial killer had some sick beats and was laying down music. It's actually like serious in nature. You're gonna go and chop someone up. You're gonna sing and rap about it. This is like horrorcore. Sematary has really inspired me to seek out a lot of other horrorcore. I went back and listened to some 3 6 Mafia. You know, I listened to some Clipping, which came out last year. It was a like really good horrorcore record. You know, this year I listened to that Backxwash, and I listened to Scarlxrd. But Sematary, for me, tops the list. Having these horror elements in your hip-hop is really getting me to enjoy hip-hop and notice that there is some diversity in things you can bring into the genre. You know, you can hear some black metal elements, trap metal. I've never heard of trap metal until this year, and you know, I've been discovering and finding out. Please let me know what I'm missing out on. There's a lot of stuff that I have not seen or heard myself. I can't wait to see what Cemetery Graveman and the Haunted Mound have in store for us over the coming years. And that concludes my top 10 albums of 2021. Let me know in the comments, what was your favorite horror, paranormal, supernatural, occult-themed album of 2021? Or what's your favorite non-paranormal record album of 2021? Your favorite album of the year? Please let me know in the comments. Like and subscribe, comment. I've been enjoying doing these videos on paranormal media. Let me know what you'd like to see. The True Searchers have a lot of paranormal investigations coming up. Please stay tuned for our channel as we release more videos in the coming year. I think 2021 will be a big year for us. And as always, the truth is paranormal. Be a searcher.